Hello, everyone. I am Greta Wall. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by the leader of T3 Live's Inner Circle Virtual Trading Floor, David Prince. This is our weekly market check-in here. Hi, David. How's it going today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm pretty good. It's Tuesday, so we're chugging along through the week. All right. The topic of our stream today is that it is Nvidia earnings week. Tomorrow is the day for Nvidia's earnings report. So we're getting ready with David Prince, and then we'll go through some of what he's been doing as well in the room. So David, when it comes to Nvidia's earnings report after the market close tomorrow, sitting here on Tuesday, what's your thesis on Nvidia currently and where the stock is ahead of the report?
Sure. Well, we have some messy news, and we don't really know if it's real or not regarding overheating in racks and the Blackwell product. But I'm not really putting too much weight on it. Here's what I know: the markets demands a lot. We expect to beat and raise quarter. I think everyone and their mother expects that. Stock isn't particularly expensive based on forward guidance, but it's not a give me trading. Not very far away from highs. So this is one of those reports where I own stock much lower than here, and I'll remain long stock, but I don't think it's a great setup for calls. I also wouldn't bet against it. So in terms of how to play the print, I think if you own it, it's been a great stock to own. It's been an amazing buy on all dips, anything that's a realistic pullback. And I wouldn't change that. As far as being aggressive into the print and first buying stock here, it feels average to me. I don't know if the overheating issues add up to something. I don't know if it's just the market won't be in the mood to buy high and sell higher because the stock's done so well for so long. So I'm going to react, which is something I don't always do, but I'll wait and react more. I do know if we were lucky enough to get an aggressive pullback, I'd be a buyer, and I think the whole street would, and I think that's probably the best setup we can get. Is a pullback on what I perceive to be pretty darn good growth and great guidance.
Nvidia reports so late in earnings season. We're basically done with earnings season at this point, and we're getting Nvidia's report, which is arguably the most important report for the street.
Yeah.
So you gotta think back to all the chip makers that have already reported. I think Taiwan Semiconductor being the most relevant.
I think I'm going to be much more. So the chip makers were all over the board. TSM has been nothing but great news, which, without TSM, NVIDIA can't create products. So we have pretty good indication that things are just fine at NVIDIA, just via Taiwan Semi. But if you were to look at the SOX, which is trading well beneath the 200-day, and you were to look at AMAT and KLA and Lam and so many of these semiconductor equipment companies, well, they're not trading great. So I think how NVIDIA relates to the entire space is maybe equally important. And I think that maybe if people do sell NVIDIA on the news, there'll be a great entry in the SOX or SOXL, the Ultra, or one of these oversold semi stocks, because they're not oversold enough. They're just weak and ugly, but there's not even a great entry level here. So it might wake up the whole space and enable us to do quite a lot of buying outside of just NVIDIA. Because, when I look at the space is kind of ugly. Like today, NAS is up. The SOX is down 0.5%. Right? We're up 105 points on NASDAQ. So not particularly, overwhelming positive performance. The winners have been outside of big cap tech, as you know, a lot of these mid cap kind of new type of names that have done well this earnings season.
Nvidia has very much been the market in 2024. As Nvidia goes, so goes the market. So much of that I feel like has changed lately. The leaders, of course, have been the Teslas, the Bitcoins, the small caps, et cetera, with the Trump trade happening. Do you feel like that's a long-term shift in Nvidia's relationship to the market, or just because we're so close to the election still?
I think it's for the next couple months into the end of the year. I think there are very, very strong proxies to our new administration, to the president-elect. And those are Bitcoin, Fintech, and most certainly even more so Tesla. And I think that is not going to change till the end of the year. But I do believe, we'd be kind of foolhardy to assume NVIDIA somehow disappoints us, which is very doubtful. and that it would not affect Amazon and would not affect Meta and would not affect the other big cap names. I'd be hesitant to get super bullish the market and say the winners of recent, which are the Reddits and the A Labs and the Squares and the Affirms, that they can carry an entire market. But it does prove they're like bull markets underneath the indices, right? Fintech has been just tried and true leader for weeks now. Like all of them. You throw Toast in there, throw Sofi in there. And Tesla obviously is its own index. So Nvidia doesn't rule the entire market anymore, but it is very important.
When you're looking at the price, we're 143, over 143 headed into the print. Of course, not been the huge leader in recent weeks, but definitely not beaten up. We're up
doing
from
just fine. And
$90
versus the other
in
semis, it's
August.
doing particularly well.
Yeah. So the setup, we talk about so much. The setup for earnings is so much about where a stock is pre the print. Do you think we're too high where we need a really good beat and raise quarter, or is
if we were at 130, I would take calls in addition to the stock I already own. Like there's a level down there. There's a 50-day down there. I can make a case down at 132, 130. We recently bought a lot of stock, 129, 130. It was 3-4 weeks ago on some headline that took it down. Maybe it was ASML. Anyway, the point is that's enough of a pullback where I think you can get more aggressive here into highs, a few points off. It's hard to be super excited, but I wouldn't bet against it, in a million years. So I think somewhere in that 130 area, then 125 is where I'd get excited to buy the stock again. And maybe they'll tell me something that forces me to change my mind, but I'm already anticipating a great report. So what's going on now is they have to convince people that during the normalization process, which is they're not going to grow earnings and revenue 100% anymore year over year, that there's still enough over the next 2-3 years that it can carry a 30, 35 times multiple, which I think is still for this type of company, not a gross multiple by any stretch. But that's what it comes down to, is just, hey, there's going to be some normalization. We're not going to grow, this type of revenue base, the law of large numbers, but if anyone can do it, it's them.
I mean, you got to think we're coming to really the end of that kind of year-over-year growth, because we're hitting those quarters where last year
for all these, I don't pretend to be a macro guy. I can't really see too far beyond 2-3 months, but you don't have to be a genius to know that in 2025, there are going to be really hard comps for many, many semi and big cap names. Less software, where there have been some issues and they may set up better. But when it comes to so much of the leadership over the past 23, 24, really tough comps.
All right. Let's talk about Tesla and what you've been doing with Tesla lately. The stock today is sitting right around 340, right under 345. You were buying last week as low as 306, and we're up here at 345. So, I mean, quite a move there. I mean, the volatility in Tesla, not volatility, but the ups and downs that we've seen in Tesla in the past week feel a lot like 2020 Tesla, 2021 Tesla.
It's been pretty powerful. What I think it is, though, is narrative. I always say this, and hopefully people agree. I believe narrative in the short term moves stocks more than facts, and narrative is vicious. Because narrative is like hopes and dreams. And I don't mean to get philosophical, but that's what narrative is. There's no fact behind it. It's, Trump is going to be more positive about Bitcoin, and he's meeting with Armstrong from Coinbase, and Bitcoin goes up 2,000, and MSTR is now up like 40, 50 points from when that headline came out. So my point is, this is where volatility comes in when you trade off narrative, which is based on headlines. So Tesla, to me, makes a lot of sense. And then you take in the fact that earnings were pretty solid, right? For them, one of the better earnings reports, margins much better. And then you take in the fact that it's still way off from highs when, Amazon was just hitting highs last week, and Apple's not far from them, and Nvidia was literally at 148 last week. And you start to understand, okay, why it can move so quickly? Because catch-up moves are vicious. And if you want to look, it's not just Tesla. Square and Affirm are making moves they haven't made, and the velocity of their moves are bigger than they've had in 3 years, since Cathie Wood days. So it's kind of normal based upon what we're trading, which is, I don't want to poo-poo it, but it's narrative, right? Like, oh, Fintech, all the charts look better. Any dips, got to buy them. Affirm, Square. And these moves, we haven't seen moves where like Affirm goes up 15, 20 points in a couple of weeks. So in the grand scheme of things, Tesla's just part of that. It's not abnormal.
Talking about the payment space, the Affirms, Upstart, Toast, all of those. What has been your thesis on that space as you've been so active in it recently?
Well, first off, really great earnings across the board. So all of them really had solid earnings, from Toast to Block, I guess that we should be calling it, to Affirm. And Affirm was sold off on the numbers, but the numbers were actually pretty good. And I said, I don't get it, but I'm not going to fight the market. The stock's down, but earnings are pretty solid. So, and then you have these like perfect setups where with a Block, you have all this Bitcoin exposure, and you have Fintech, and buy now, pay later seems to be working well. And it seems like people are actually paying. People used to say buy now, pay never. It seems to be a product that people use. So after just a base for, months and years of Fintech doing nothing, including the PayPals and the Sofis, they all are just making up for 3 years of lost time and huge moves. So across the board, they look really, really good. And we've stuck with them because the charts are so good. Right now, I'm in Sofi, not Affirm. At other times, it was Affirm for me. And we're trying, in a market where like we're waiting on Nvidia, I'm trying not to do too much. So I kind of have my favorite AI name outside of Nvidia. I have my favorite Fintech names, Affirm and Square. And then my favorite Trump proxies, which for me are iBit and Tesla. And then it's like Q trades, but that's been like the focus. How do we play this market with the most upside and hopefully limited downside, and pick our proxies? And we've done it, not bad.
With Nvidia's earnings report so late, do you like that? Do you hate that? Do you wish it was different? Or does it, keep some excitement toward the end of earnings season so that you don't forget about it?
I actually don't care. And if anything, I think it's better because it gives more to do and more to chew on over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
So
because if it was the same week, that we got the Apple, the Amazon, the Meta, the Microsoft, and all, then it's like, then it's all over. And
as traders, you enjoy movement. So in between, you get these moves, right? Off the information report yesterday, you had a move and the stock's up 7 or 8. So an aggressive trader was able to take advantage of that. Once the news comes out, sometimes it's less simple because right now everything's up in the air. There's a quiet period. We don't know what news is true, what's reality, what's fake. So I don't mind the late report.
All right. When it comes to XBI, you've been very bullish XBI into the end of the year, but I think there's a little bit of a wrinkle happening with XBI at this point. And the fund got hit, last week by the nomination of RFK Jr. Does that change your thesis on the biotech space into the end of the year? Or do you think that's
very
just
loud,
just
cut to the chase. It's on Twitter. Last week, after not plummeting, but pulling back to 100, we bounced to 102. And I said, listen, not only do you not want to buy XBI, whether it's RFK, whether it's the charts, I'm wrong longer term, like in the next month or two. It does not set up well. Sell or lighten up. And that was at 102. And I haven't touched it since. Even down 10 points. So I actually wrote about this. My best call last week, which if you're on Inner Circle, you'd probably agree, is telling everyone to get the F out at 102 because it doesn't trade well. And let's not go with this is my thesis and I have to be right because I'm going to be wrong. I get them wrong too. So that was probably my best call last week, is to tell everyone it's time to lighten up or sell it all, because whether it's a narrative that RFK is going to be bad, or whether it's simply that rates and inflation are not going to be friendly, whatever it may be, it's not friendly to biotech. Lighten up. So I haven't touched anything biotech wise since it broke down, since 102.
All right. Okay. So, Nvidia's earnings report is tomorrow after the close. That's the big one of the week, but retail space also reporting this week.
Yeah, we also have Snowflake. Two big ones, Snowflake and Palo Alto. tomorrow. So
yeah. So
well,
big day tomorrow.
Yeah.
Any focus for you on like the Walmarts, the Targets, the Lowe's, about
No,
the
I'm not a
consumer or
big
what it says about the economy?
retail. The two or the one I'm interested in is I'm looking at Elf as maybe a
Oh
great
yeah.
long-term holds down here. And I keep pondering, is it time? We've had a cute pullback today. I think they've turned things around. I think earnings were certainly better than they've been in the past. Guidance was a bit better. If there's a retail name I'm interested in, it already had earnings itself. In terms of Target and Walmart, not much interest there. Target's been tough. I don't dislike the setup. I don't like the setup. I literally have no opinion.
Okay. All right. I've seen a lot on Twitter this weekend with, we have the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight, and Netflix, I think, messed up pretty big. I was watching on here on my TV and I was like, is it my internet? Is it Netflix? And I went on Twitter and I was like, oh, it's definitely Netflix on my internet. But the stock, let's look at it. I forgot to check this morning.
Stock pulled back and exploded.
And then exploded. So you think they're going to work it out? I mean, they're supposed to have NFL games.
I think what it comes down to, first off, Ted's a genius. The guy running the joint is one of the best out there. Secondly, I think what it points to, that's the more important thing to investors and why the stock's reacting is, wow, right? Like, look at the access they have to even like an audience no one ever dreamed of, like 60 million people. And I think what it does is provide a whole new subset, perhaps, of business that people didn't dream existed. It was all about, okay, so now that it's a maturing subcategory for, what they've always done, now we got to go to the advertising model. I think what this did is woke people up to, wow, there's a whole new business plan that could exist here, whether it be via the NFL or other fights or other big sports events. So I think that just the scale, the full TAM of what people saw, whether it went well or not, whether the buffering was a problem, I think just the TAM itself woke people up to maybe there's a lot more to this story than just does the advertising model work. That's my take on it.
All right. Okay. It passed an Nvidia this week. What are some other setups and things that you're focused on in the inner circle?
Square on a pullback to 82.83 earlier last week, and maybe Monday. No, it's Tuesday. I think it was Thursday and Friday. We got pretty aggressive. Just these earnings gaps with great setups on pullbacks. That looks like it's headed to 100. I'll keep buying on any pullbacks. The other one that's been good to us, that's been a focus, but it trades wide and volatile, is this Astera Labs ALAB. That is going to be a big proxy for Nvidia. It's in a breakout today and has room to 100, 110. I think we're going to get there, but it is going to be a definite proxy based on Nvidia. So not just owning Nvidia, I think ALAB will be one I'm looking at. And then we just have, a bunch of things kind of that are cute trades, but nothing I'm in love with. I would say it's really been like, I have my IBIT and I have my Tesla. So Tesla, I got the smallest I've been since that. When did I buy it? 306s. I think it was Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday after hours.
I'm the smallest I've been into 348 as of yesterday. Right now, I'd love to buy on pullbacks. I think it'll keep working. 330, 323. And back towards that 310 levels, I'd buy Tesla. So I'm going to stick with what's winning. Square, otherwise known as Block, Affirm, IBIT, Bitcoin on any pullbacks, which, up here, I mean a real pullback. I mean something like lower, 80,000, 82,000. But I think into the end of the year, what has worked will continue to work, which is anything fintech that had decent earnings, Bitcoin, and Tesla. So that's kind of my focus. And then ALAB off this, which we already own, and it's breaking out today off of the Nvidia report.
It's from YouTube, wants to know if you have any thoughts on Ethereum.
Yeah, strikes me as a great catch-up play, and I know everyone's looking at it, but as someone who's tired and old and helps a lot of people, I just keep it simple and go with Bitcoin because it works. So like IBIT, I was buying a bunch for my kids and myself at 32, 33. It's $52. Like it's been good to me, so I'm not reinventing the wheel, but I totally get how Ethereum is maybe where there's more alpha because it's obviously trailing a great deal to Bitcoin. But otherwise, I have no problem with it. It's just Bitcoin's easier to me. The little bit I understand better there.
All right. You mentioned through the 310 area on Tesla. Do you think that the stock is too extended and really needs that kind of a pullback?
So I wouldn't say extended, right? Because we were at 358 just a week ago and then pulled back very aggressively. I would say the snapback was really aggressive, and I wouldn't be a buyer here. But yesterday, anyone who bought, there was a pullback. We went to 348. We pulled all the way back to 330. Well, those people got paid 15, 16 points today. So I'd say knowing your levels is important. Would I buy it in the 340s? No. Into 330, I would, and 323. And then you have to test those lows from the other day when we got to 306, which was after hours. So I think it's 310. So I would buy on those types of pullbacks. I would not be lazy and just buy it here today. Between Ukraine, Russia, Nvidia, there should be enough volatility where we get these intraday pullbacks. Maybe it's rates, yields. So I don't think, I wouldn't wake up today and say I'm buying Tesla now at $40 above last week's lows.
What is your opinion on the current rate environment and the Fed's cutting and rates are not listening?
My opinion is, God, I don't know anything because I would have thought the economy would have slowed down a lot more than it has. So my opinion is I know nothing. But I really think housing is such a big part of people's net worth, right? And I see housing going lower. And I think rates, where they are going to help that happen. So I think eventually that's going to eat into people's pockets. And I think a slower housing market we're seeing ugly in Austin and Miami and even Palm Beach and other areas like that. So I think it'll leak into the economy and eventually will slow down and rates will be more friendly. Yields will back up. But right now, I can't say I've been right? People seem to be spending and inflation is, I don't want to say rearing its ugly head, but it's not exactly going away. So I know nothing. My best assumption is it'll be related to real estate and we will start to slow down and we will see inflation pull back and we will see yields back up. But maybe that doesn't happen while the market's so excited and everyone's so excited into the end of the year. Maybe it's a January, February story.
Yeah. John from YouTube wants to know if you have any levels for Sofi.
Sure. So I should be honest. I made fun of Sofi and said people who stared at it for 3 years, it was like dead money. And then it was about, if you look at my Twitter, you'll see I look back, it was October something. The stock was at like $9. And I said, I even like Sofi here, to quote myself. So you could just see like the whole identity change, right? And now it looks fantastic. And this is a pretty easy chart. 90% of the time, it's the 8 and 10 day. So the best case is going to be 1335. Here's the flip side. If you ever get a real correction, it hasn't deviated and been underneath the 21 day since it was $8. The 21 day is rising. It's presently 12. So if you ever get a shot at the 12s, that's kind of your excited, wow, I want to own it here. So for right now, your okay area is 13. Your great area is a 21 day, which is closer to 1209.
All right, great. Do you think this morning was the Russia news?
Here's
the market.
Do
you think the market really cares?
So I'm going to go with what I told Inner Circle. And to be honest, I wasn't that excited. I didn't do a lot of buying. But I'll still tell you exactly what I told them. I said, and this was early in the day, I said, this is actually a positive. The narrative right now is that in order to get peace, in order to stop a war, you need to actually escalate a battle. And the words via Putin today are enough escalation that people are actually turning the table on this and thinking this as a bullish event that will bring both Putin, Trump, and Zelensky, everyone to the table and maybe create peace. So whether the market's right or wrong, that was clearly the narrative. That's why we saw a bid pretty early on because the Qs were what, 494 for a minute pre-market. The narrative now is, wait a second, his words, this escalation might be what gets everyone to the table because the president-elect ran on $1 big focus. Yeah, sure, he has many things he talked about, but it was, hey, when I'm around, there is no war. And when I'm around, I'm not going to support war. And thus, maybe the escalation is what we needed. So I know it sounds backwards. It was in a way bullish for the market. And I think the market supports that.
The market has obviously been happy with the election results, just based on the action that we've seen. But of course, Trump has talked a lot about tariffs and implementing tariffs. Do you think the market's just kind of ignoring the impact of
that'll matter when facts matter and earnings come. So that's a 2025 story. I definitely think tariffs, like, it matters. It's going to matter to the Apples of the world. It's going to matter to some big companies. It's not just going to be like, oh, don't buy Baba, but not now. It's going to matter in 2025.
All right, so the market's got their blinders on. They're like,
it's like, you know, people, you have all those people who are talking about Nvidia's PE or like Bitcoin doesn't make sense to them, or sometimes, like in trading, especially if you're looking out for, 8, 12 weeks, none of that matters. Especially when you can buy in a firm in the mid 40s and the next thing you know, it's 60s, or Square in the 70s. Next thing you know, it's 90s, or Tesla it was 4 weeks ago. I bought it at 222. I went to 350 in 4 weeks. So yeah, I don't care. I care come 2025. And then I think everything becomes more difficult. The comps, tariffs, and maybe we actually look at reality and earnings and things like that. For right now, it doesn't matter till the market forces us to care.
Gotcha. All right.
Let me give an example. The way XBI, like, I would have ignored XBI, a little bit of weakness. Okay, it's trailing IWM. But then it was screaming how weak it was. Even while it was going up, it was like 105. And I told people, you got to trim some, because there were people here, with me up 9, 10 points. I said, it's actually really weak. Based upon where IWM was, it should be at like 110. So if the market forces us to care, we'll care. For right now, the market doesn't. Market is very binary, like, hey, Trump said this, buy this. In 2025, that'll change.
All right. Question from YouTube. Does David think the market is pricing in a Trump lawsuit on Meta?
That's a good question. I haven't bought a share of Meta and keep saying I'm waiting for it to pull back, and I don't like how it trades. I would say it is definitely pricing in that Trump is not friendly to the Metas of the world. But then Google went higher, but I think that's because he's not in favor of breaking the company up the way maybe the Biden administration.
Yeah.
So I can say the answer is yes. Is it lawsuit? Is it simply that unfriendly regulation? The answer is yes. The specifics, I don't know. It almost doesn't matter, but that's definitively why it's underperforming. And the day after the election, it told you that, because we saw stocks gapping up huge and Meta actually went lower. So the answer is yes.
All right. SMCI is back. Up 30% today. They named an auditor so they keep their NASDAQ listing. What are your thoughts on SMCI here?
If numbers are real, it's really cheap. So like today, I had a couple of people, it's up so much, would you short? I go, maybe they're just a bunch of screw ups. But if the numbers are real, it's not really a short. Like, it's kind of cheap. The flip side is I'd never buy it now that it's rallied. For anyone who maybe played lotto and had some stock thinking they'll figure it out pre getting kicked off the exchange, they won big. Now you got to actually see that when the numbers come out, things aren't restated and maybe it's not as cheap as it looks. Based on forward guidance, I don't know, it's like 10, 12, 13 times or something. It's hard to say it's a bad investment, except for you don't have the numbers. So the answer is, I don't care till I get the numbers. But for right now, gamblers got paid. I wouldn't short it. I wouldn't buy it. I see nothing to do till they state their numbers and the auditor does their job. We got half of, what we needed, but the truth is the numbers are far more important than just hiring an auditor. So when that comes, okay, maybe I'll miss some upside, but I've been around too long. These don't always work out great. So for right now, I see nothing to do till those numbers come.
Yeah, we still need that 10K for sure. Another question from YouTube. IWM struggling at 230. Will it break above soon?
Great question. So on Friday, into that pullback, I got a bit aggressive, even 228, 228.50, and then into 230. I guess it was yesterday. I sold most or all of it. I think if numbers, meaning inflationary numbers, are subdued, you can get a bounce. It makes sense, but it's definitely not leading. Like there was a moment, right, where the street was very comfortable with IWM can work. Small caps are going to work because we're going to have lower taxes. And some of these companies are actually putting in good numbers. The firms, they're not small caps, but mid caps. But we can still talk about the non-Mag 7 names. And people started to get excited, even with yields rising. Now I feel that's changed a bit, and people are now back to, wait a second, inflation is an issue. And till inflation's proven not to be an issue, and finally, like the nail in the coffin was our Fed chairman said, yo, sorry to speak in colloquial terms, but he's like, yo, you're not getting a rate cut. I think he put the nail in the coffin. So basically we have to have dovish kind of info, like whatever numbers are coming out, the CPIs, the PPIs, housing. We need to see a slowing economy, a lack of inflation to get it going again, because our Fed chairman basically said you're not getting rate cuts till 2025. The market's still like undecided. It's not like it's 20%. Would it go from like 80% to 50? But the point was that combined with XBI, which is all small cap, and RFK not being a friend to biotech, it was just too much to bear. And then some strong numbers last week. So the answer is it's probably going to be economic numbers that decide.
Okay. Is Amazon a buy now that the insiders have sold? If so, what's your target? So next question. Please.
Great question. I think if you're looking out for the next 2-3 months, like Amazon's trading at its lowest valuation based on cash flow it ever has. You can go back and look at the numbers. However, God, it's a pain in the A. So I'll tell you how I played it. Amazon literally for a few moments, a couple of weeks ago, was probably my largest position or one of them. Into that pullback at 205. I said to Inner Circle, I really think Jeff will be done. If you just look at how he's selling, and once he is, you're going to get this crazy gap, and I'm not going to chase it then. So based on valuation and it being a subdued move because he's selling, I think this is where to buy. So then the stock proceeded to go to 215, and I sold like 90% of my stock. Then it pulled back. And I said, listen, if it gets under 208, I'll start adding again, but I barely had any stock left. Then it pulls back, and I started adding again last week, a little bit between 207 and 204. And then his dog and his ex-wife filed. Not his dog, but his ex-wife. And it just became too much of a fight. And I'm like, God, I am so sick of this. So rather than puke the stock at lows, because it got ugly on Friday, what we did is we bought some calls when it was 200. They went up a decent amount. I sold those. And then yesterday into the rally at 204, I said, I want a clear head. This is too much of a fight. I'm going to get flat. Now, if you are a long-term investor, like my wife doesn't trade that way. She bought some and she's just holding. If you are looking at a month or two, this will all go by the wayside and eventually it'll hold. Today, it held the 21-day beautifully, which is down in the 198s. So longer-term investor, meaning beyond the next 4 weeks, I think it's cheap. I think it should be bought on dips, ideally between that 198 and 200 where the 21-day is. I think if you're short-term, Mackenzie, Jeff, they're all a pain in the A, and I wish they'd stop selling. So for those who trade like, shorter time frames, it's a pain in the neck, and it's more a sell than a buy till it gets back over 205 and you hear Mackenzie stop. That's her name, right? I think that's her name.
Yeah, Mackenzie. All right, great. All right, we're over 30 minutes here, so thank you for all of your time, but I'll let you get back to trading. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share on the current market environment?
Sure. I wouldn't worry about the market as a whole so much. I would look underneath and what's working, because there are these raging bull markets, right? We saw it in financials prior to the last couple of days, JPM, Goldman Sachs. We saw it obviously in Bitcoin. We know the leader in Bitcoin, right? MicroStrategy has gone up far more than Bitcoin itself. In fact, it was just $200 like a few weeks ago. and you see what's going on with fintech. So I would like, good or bad, Nvidia is going to be good, but how the market responds is up, to the gods. We'll see tomorrow. I would look underneath and realize there's all these bull markets going on: fintech, financials, Bitcoin. Know what the leaders are and be ready to buy dips, because I think they'll all be buyable into the end of the year. So I think the best thing is that, it used to be like, what's Nvidia doing? What's Mag 7 doing? Oh, there's nothing to do. Go home. Now you can buy Square, Affirm, PayPal even. I don't buy PayPal, and JPM and Goldman on pullbacks and Bitcoin. So there's a lot more to do. So just be aware of what's working and know your levels, because it's actually more fun now. There's way more utilities to buy than there used to be. Then when it was like, is Mag 7 working or not? Okay, I'm going home. It's not.
Yeah, it's definitely nice. The market has spread out more.
Spreading out.
For sure.
Now it's fun.
All right. For everyone who's with us live, if you want to work with David, you can go to t3live.com/DP to apply to join the Inner Circle. It's a screenshot from the Rooney Gizzy T3 and Inner Circle has changed my life. This was from last week. Best week of my life. Best week I've had in years. See these messages kind of,
Tesla was a big deal
often. Tesla was a big deal last week, but every Friday there's a lot of, this is the best week ever. So the room is doing great, and people are learning a lot from David and Aaron and from each other. So it's a great community. So again, you can go to t3live.com/DP to apply. David, have a great rest of your trading day. And
Thank you.
I'll talk to you in a week.
Thanks everyone for joining. Bye-bye.